Hello, everybody. It's another edition of Knowledge is Wealth. Um, Rich people, they own libraries. Poor people own big TVs. Poverty starts in a mom before it reaches your hand, and knowledge is wealth. I'm Isa Abu Isa.
This is Coach Gaines.
This is Nafis Abuze. Today's episode, alhamdulillah, will be we're going to be dealing with what is money. So in this episode, we're going to explain what is money is. We got today our co-host who's coming in also as like a guest. We will be interviewing him today, our brother Coach Gaines.
Little
He's
question
going
and
to
answer.
shed some information on what is money, how does it look, how does it work, and things like that. As far as financial literacy, what it plays, and the role that it plays. So me and Issa is going to ask the brother some questions, and he's going to elaborate and explain some things for us, inshallah. Um, yeah, Coach Gaines, the first question we would like to ask you is, what is currency? What is money?
So, currency has to fit conditions. Uh, Pretty much, what the people want to trade with can be currency. However, it has to fit three categories. It has to fit three conditions. It has to be a medium of exchange. It has to store value, and it has to have limited availability. So, if the item fits these three, has these three conditions, it can pretty much be in play as a form of currency or money.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Okay.
So, basically, if something doesn't have those characteristics, can it be considered to be money or a currency at that point? Could it be or could it not be? That would be the next question because we're going to bring up those conditions, and
Yeah.
how do you apply those conditions to what we're using today?
Right. So if it doesn't have those three core conditions, it can't be considered a currency. Now it can have value. You can trade with it, but the idea of currency, money flowing, money changing between hands, there being a common value. Everybody the value is known. Everybody knows what it is, knows it's popular, it's known, and then there's limitation. It's not oversaturated, it's not flooded in a particular economy.
So so this would be my question, right? Somebody who doesn't know, right? And I hear you say that. I would say to myself, I said, well, is there a difference between money and currency then?
Yes, there's a difference between money and currency. And the difference is durability. Durability is the main difference. Because with money, it doesn't depreciate at all. It could lose value. Prices can go up and go down, but it won't go flat. It won't go to zero. And over time, it won't fade away. Like for instance, gold or silver. The same gold or silver that we have and we're trading with today is the same gold or silver that was being traded back in Egyptian pharaoh times. Now, the value of it, what we consider it to trade for, now that's another conversation. However, it as a material is used for trade and is accepted as a currency all over the world.
Okay.
Now, sometimes that doesn't trade in every market or every economy. Some people may not accept this bill or may not accept that bill, and the bill in and of itself will disintegrate over time. Years later, it's paper. It's made of inferior substance, so it doesn't have that longevity, and it can be printed. So the difference between gold and a dollar bill is that a gold you can't make more of it. So it has a limited supply. So that limited supply can prevent it from being oversaturated.
It keeps the
causing-
value basically the
it
same.
keeps the value in check.
Okay. Keeps the value. So the dollar itself, it doesn't meet those criteria in every sense.
Yeah, because in and of itself doesn't have an intrinsic value like the gold.
Yeah.
The gold, even without it being a change of, even if it's not a uh, medium of exchange, it in and of itself has value. Whereas with a dollar bill, without something representing it or something backing it, it in and of itself doesn't have value like a mineral or like a stone wood or gold.
So, but a dollar's still a currency though.
But a dollar is
Still-
still
still a
currency,
currency.
but it's not money because of that condition.
Just want to
not
make
being
that
met.
clear. Okay.
So you mentioned that fiat currency, right? Can you explain what type of currency that? Because you talked about gold being
Okay.
a form of currency, and then fiat being a form of currency. So
Okay,
what is
so,
fiat?
so fiat currency is the paper notes that you see floating in circulation. It's the dollar bill, it's the $5 bill, it's the yen, it's the euro.
That which we see today as being money.
Right. That's supposed to represent, and it's supposed to represent a fraction of wealth that is owned by that a fraction of that circulates in an economy, in a under a government, right? So the government pretty much prints the money, and then the banks distribute the money. And that money goes out in exchange for labor. That money goes out in exchange for loans, and there's a percentage rate that is connected to it when it goes out that way. But the fiat currency in and of itself, people believe in its value. That's what holds it up. So it's redeemed, it's believed by the people, it's traded by the people. It retains its value that way. But if time goes on and those same people don't agree, then it can lose its value. It can lose its place. Whereas gold and silver, from now until the end of time, people will still recognize this as as value that can be measured, weighed, and it can be used for trade.
So the difference between the two will basically be the gold and the silver. The mineral has real value, and the actual fiat currency just has confidence.
It has confidence.
People basically believe or have confidence that it's worth something. So that's what keeps it going.
Make
it simple.
To make it simple, it's supposed to be a receipt for the value of.
All right, so is there any other type of currencies besides, you mentioned gold and silver being a form of currency. You mentioned fiat money, which is the dollar note being currency. Is there any other type of currencies as well?
Yeah, well, we have digital currency, which is like Bitcoin and blockchain that uses blockchain technology, which is pretty much a spreadsheet that it's a transparent spreadsheet that computers all over the world can look, and we can see that transactions are being recorded. So that's used as a form of or medium of trade.
My question would be, we're saying that Bitcoin, that's a digital currency. So what would be the difference between that, the EBT cards, the debit card and the credit cards and those types of things, which is also digital, numbers changing back and forth. So what's the difference between the Bitcoin blockchain and that?
Yeah, well, they all use technology. That's blockchain technology evolved, through the uses of credit cards and debit cards and different machines. So the Stripe reader, the UPC coding, but that all has to be recorded. And that record has to be known, and everybody has to have access to it. It can't be changed and these things. So as that technology evolved, we have what is Bitcoin. And from that Bitcoin, currency, the blockchain technology, which secures it, is what banks and world currencies use to track transactions and make sure things aren't being sold twice.
So how do we know
or coins aren't being used twice.
So what would be the basic difference between the two?
Between
as
what?
far as the way that blockchain is applied, Bitcoin is applied, and the way that the debit card is, like as far as the intrinsic, well, you're telling me how it works, but how would, for example,
So
the credit card has interest, has the
yeah.
usury on it, but the Bitcoin is something, it's using some of the same technology, but its
the
reality is a little
The
different.
credit card represents the money that is in the bank.
Okay,
Or the money that is on the credit that's allowed on the card.
okay.
But the Bitcoin in and of itself is a coin. It holds value. It is tradable. And it is limited. So people store value in that, and they're able to trade and use it as a form of currency. So it's two different things, but what we have to understand is that the technology makes it possible to do transactions like this and to record transactions like this. For both. And what makes it secure is how advanced the blockchain technology is.
Would you say that with the credit card and the debit card, would you say like with that type of form of currency, which be like commercial banking, is it anything that's associated with like debt or anything like that with it?
Well, yes. Well, all right, so that's how the fiat currency comes into play. The central bank or the federal bank prints the money from thin air and loans the bank to the smaller banks that actually give the housing loans. The interest that they give these banks is transferred to the person borrowing. So eventually they just pay it forward. And then when they pay their loan, they essentially pay for the money, which essentially pays for it being printed in the first place. So the government controls the quantity of money supply.
So it's government money, basically.
Yes, it's government money. So they're controlling the supply based off of the fluctuating interest rates to try to keep inflation intact. And what inflation is when the buying power of a dollar.
We get to that.
Okay.
Yeah. Because that goes into our next question when we actually
Okay.
what is inflation.
Okay.
we
So that's how the fiat currency actually comes into play. So it comes into play, it's printed from thin air, and then it's loaned. And then those loans are transferred to smaller loans. And then as those loans are paid back, it eventually pays back for it being printed in the first place.
Yeah.
And it's supposed to keep the economy moving forward.
So it's all
It's called the monetary.
It's currency, but it's not money. What we're talking about, we're talking about currency at this point. We're not talking about that actually being real
Yeah,
money.
now this is defined as currency. This is still this wouldn't be considered real money like silver and gold. So very important to understand.
Yeah, so like far as with dealing with the commercial banking, right, the credit cards and the debit cards, so people so we can all understand that a little bit. If dealing with that is how it's really the way that the commercial money is, the commercial currency here is that you're going into debt because it's a fractional reserve type system that's being played. Because every time I give my money to the bank is holding off and then lending to someone else. You know what I'm saying? So that maybe the public can know that this form of currency that they use is a form of currency that is based off the initial debt system that is designed dealing in this type of currency, different from the fiat currency and the gold currency.
Yeah, it's debt passed on in the form of a note.
In the form of a note. Okay, all right, we got that. So our next question is, what is inflation?
Inflation is when the dollar in a particular economy loses its spending power. So for instance, back in the day, a cup of coffee used to be 25 cents. Okay. Now a cup of coffee is $2.50, $3, and things like that. The coffee itself didn't change. It's still 16 ounce, it's still a cup, but there's other factors that increase the price. Some factors may be the price of materials going up, which is a more of a push inflation, or labor might go up, or a situation might be where there's more money in circulation. The money's being overprinted. So you have to now, in order for the money to value what it used to, you have to give more. So if it used to be a quarter, in order for you to get the value of what a quarter was, 1950s, you have to spend $1 now to reach that value.
All right, so you just mentioned three things. I just want to stop on them real quick.
Okay.
You said the first thing about the push like inflation, right?
Yeah, there's two main types of inflation:
Well,
push inflation and demand.
But you mentioned three of them. You mentioned that. You mentioned the push the push one. Then you mentioned when the laborers, the workers are asking for more, they might want to raise.
That can fall, but that
Into
can kind of fall into
Then you
push. They try to split those up, but that can fall into
And then
push.
you mentioned the other type, which is dealing with
Printing money.
printing money, more money, excessive money in circulation.
Okay.
Printing more money, like the three forms of inflation. So you mentioned, I just wanted to make sure I highlight that.
Okay.
And demand
Okay,
inflation too.
okay.
Also
So
demand.
these can be three means or ways where we can see inflation coming about. This is
Right.
Well, let me throw this at you. Is it possible? And I wonder where this will come in at. For example, like inflation could be caused by, say, if a price of something is going down and down and down, people wait, right? That type of situation, which kind of get into our next question. So I won't even ask that because I kind of answered it myself. But my question would be, for example, like demand. Let's say demand inflation, right? If you have a situation where a company makes 10 million of these things a year, right? And a person goes now and the people are buying 10 million of these units, whatever the unit is, right? but they only can make 8 million. The company. At that point, they got to rise the price.
They gotta rise
of the
the
thing.
price.
And that causes inflation
That
because
causes inflation.
they got to make up for the 2 million units that they had made or they
So
couldn't
now here,
sell.
inflation in and of itself isn't a problem. The problem is inflation doesn't inflate on everything at the same time. So products that you need will inflate, but your salary won't inflate to offset it.
Yeah.
You know, so that's where it gets hairy with inflation because it's
You're trying to balance it.
the
and not
government.
make
The
sure
government
one
is
side-
trying to maintain that balance by the quantity theory and how much money supply that they allow into the economy. But the problem is when we send our money to other countries, and then that money starts to come back, and now we have more money in circulation, and we didn't allow for that money because that money has to come back. We spent it
And that's
out
the
there,
money that you didn't print. That's money that's coming back.
and that money comes back,
Yeah.
and it floods our system, causing inflation where our dollar doesn't have the same spending power anymore. So that can be a problem.
So the pitfalls of inflation is that the nation can actually suffer from the actual inflation, like what we've seen in Zimbabwe.
Well,
and
that's how you
Hungary.
fall into a recession.
Okay.
You fall into a recession when your GDP or your gross domestic product, your output is more than you're putting out. What you're putting out for profit is less than what you're bringing in and what you're consuming. So now that causes your overall economy to go into a recession. So that's decline in economic activity over a period of time.
Productivity goes down.
Productivity goes down. Jobs get lost. Now money's not being circulated. Right now, we got the COVID-19 pandemic. Everybody's getting a stimulus check, but that's not really that stimulus check is money that they're gonna end up taking away from us later on from somewhere else. We're gonna end up paying for it down the line, but they're giving it to us up front right now so that
Stabilize
it
the
can
economy.
stabilize the economy because it came to a screeching halt. So we're technically in a recession right now. So if that doesn't kind of balance itself out, we can lose a lot of the spending power that the American dollar had at one point, which could,
So when you say a recession, you're basically a recession eventually technically turns into a depression. They're basically on the same level.
yes,
Hold on, before we get into
more
that,
more
we asked-
time
Yeah.
Before we get
of
to
the
that,
receding productivity.
one of the questions we have for is when I ask what is a recession. So we're gonna, we got that right here. Like, what is a recession? You could probably go into that. We went to what was currency, the different types of currencies that's out there. Like gold and silver can be a form of currency. We went into the principles of what is currency, what is money. We also went into the fiat system, how the fiat system actually worked. Well, it's just a simple basics that you explained. You already covered that, and we went over also how commercial banking falls under a form of currency that we have in today. How that actually normally works, like what people know what is actually money. So we also talked about inflation and how inflation plays a direct role into the whole scheme of things of currency and so forth, like trying to balance out those three different things as far as the GDP, the gross.
So that they can manage the inflation. Because if the inflation is not manageable, you're gonna have problems.
The currency lose value.
The currency lose value.
Yeah.
You go into the store, you want milk. Your milk costs $30. Your toilet paper costs $60.
It was said.
and you're not making any money and you don't have a job on top of that.
Yeah.
That's where it can
It
it can
was
resemble.
said from one of the scholars of the past. They said, "Do you not see that the prices are rising? Like for the product, you see that the price." He said so. He responded by saying, "What does that have to do with anything when Allah Jalla Wa'ala is the same one who was providing for us when the prices was where it was? He's gonna provide for us now when the prices rise up. Like in terms of dealing with that inflation concept of having people think like, okay, yeah, it do get unstable at those times, but people still need to know that the provider is still Allah at the end of the day and not the currency that's in circulation. So people can really bridge that gap. Like Allah is still going to provide for you whether they have this form of currency or that form.
Well, because
of
people
currency or
still
that.
ate and survived before there was this currency.
Yeah,
This currency didn't exist at one time.
But you like we said, we always want to try to tie it in back to the people to understand that God still plays a definite role for his provisions, and provisions is more expansive than just the type of currencies that we have available. All right, so what is a recession?
So as recession is when economic activity declines for a period of time.
All right,
There's no
can you
production.
elaborate on that? Is there anything that's going on right now? Because you mentioned earlier, you said
Yeah, so we have a
we're
full, we have,
technically
we
at
have,
the time of
yeah, we're
recession.
in the recession. So our economy took a complete halt. You can't come outside and do business. No one can come together and group over a certain amount of people. So a lot of factories got shut down. Output was shut down. It started with the manufacturers in China, and then it ended up with the retailers in America. So both sides of the market got hit at the same, like, right after each other, back to back.
So
So
what about
there
Wall
was,
Street? Do Wall Street play any role in this?
well, Wall Street plays a role because they're invested in these companies that are taking a hit. These companies are publicly traded. They're relying on the demands to get meet, the supply to get meet. If things don't come from China to where we're set up right now, we're not going to be able to meet the demands. If stores aren't providing face masks and hand sanitizer, all of the shelves are empty. It's like those things will start to rise in price because of the demand. So we'll start to see that working in real time. So we're going in, we're going into one of the worst times. They have never seen nothing like this. They were comparing it to 2008. They were comparing it to.
Yeah, they said it was nothing compared to this.
Yeah,
actually.
they're saying that what we're going through now is worse than a depression. So
Okay, somebody said in Canada what the government doing to offset the recession that's taking place now due to the global pandemic is that they're getting paid to stay home.
they're getting paid to stay home. So this is going to be some things that the federal government is going to try to do to
That's here in the U.S., but some other places, other countries are trying to salvage it. I think a little bit different than everyone is
And
Mm-hmm.
this is
not
my,
doing the
this is
same
my
thing.
issue.
I
would
think
have with that.
America
If you-
was slow. Our reaction to this was the worst in every other country that I was able to.
Shoot,
you know,
Italy, the
larger
response is just as
countries.
bad.
Oh, Italy had a bad response. I heard.
Spain, a lot of the Western countries are bad at the way they responded
We
to
weren't
it. But-
prepared for this at
But
all.
the thing is, I would say is when you say about the government is giving us money, wouldn't that go into helping to inflate things and actually bring on a recession? I mean, if you just print money and just say everybody
that's-
$2 trillion and everybody gets
So
money
they-
now, how
yeah.
if everybody got money, how can the money have any value?
Well, yeah. So
You understand what my
we're
question?
we're in that conversation right now. We don't know which way it's gonna go. We don't know if the market's gonna stay flat. We don't know. People are telling us to be optimistic, but the first round of money that he pumped into the system did nothing for the system. Like it was too damaged to that. It was a stimulus that went out. It was 0% interest on it. So a lot of loans were being bought up. A lot of bonds were being bought up, and they didn't get the reaction that they were looking for immediately. I don't know how things are smoothing out now, but a lot of that had to do with the negotiation for our stimulus. So with all of that going on, what's happening? We're still not at work.
You said earlier when you was talking about the stimulus, you made a point that you said that we're going to pay for it down the line. So I
Yeah.
guess that bridge into what Brother Issa is saying here
Yeah.
is that
They gotta pay
it's
for
going to it's going to trickle back to what you were
To the
saying as
common
far as like
people.
we're in a recession. It's going to trickle back to us because that money that's being printed, it got to be paid for some way.
Somewhere.
Right.
So every
Yeah.
time
So
they print that access assets,
That's going to raise prices somewhere.
That's going to cause an inflation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's normally it's going to affect someone. So that pretty much puts
Exactly.
puts
That'll
right
be
there.
my point. And my point is that also if we're not getting any products into the country, even though obviously the country has its own products and it does its own thing, but it also gets things from China and other places, right? If
Right.
you can't restock the shelves, then what is the money for? Because product and money has to circulate together.
Yeah.
So if you give me $2 trillion and you put cash in my hand, right, which is digital, whatever currency you come up with at this point,
And I
paper or
have
digital,
nowhere to spend
and I
it.
have nowhere to spend it. The country still, I mean, it nothing still moves.
It goes back into a recession. It goes back. It goes. That's causing inflation, which can keep us in recession longer.
Okay, which will become now
a depression.
Yeah, you start.
A recession is a baby depression, basically.
Well, they're saying we're in depression now.
Okay, so listen. When you mentioned earlier,
say so much.
When you mentioned earlier, Issa said he made a point about. He said about what's the difference now in the recession that we have now in terms of why is it so devastating? As you said, you mentioned too that they saying that this is the worst that we never saw. Nothing like this.
1929 is actually better than this. Yeah.
Why is they called it a depression back then, but why is they saying this the greatest? And I was saying when you think because this is global as
Yeah.
opposed to before it was
Right.
hitting one area or one specific.
I mean,
state.
America has been a global economy since the late.
Because it affected the
1800s.
global, the world
We've
back
been
in
a global-
1929 too.
Yeah, it's expected.
It did.
What hurts America hurts the world. America, America is the global market. So it affects the globe, but we're so reliant on China for our manufacturing that is unlike it ever has been before.
Yeah, but see,
More products were being made on American soil
But see,
around
when
those times in
1929, yeah, it was.
1929.
But see, when-
We had more of an industrial.
But see, when the
economy.
the economists, they talk about the global thing making it so devastating, it's just because world governments are experiencing the same trickle down now
At the same time.
at the same time.
Yeah,
It was
yeah.
never like that.
It was never like that.
Where one economy collapsed, then another
That's
one
like
collapsed,
that's
then another
that's
one
World
collapsed.
War, that's World War type of trauma.
That's what they're saying we're in now.
Yeah.
That's why they're saying it's so devastating, because the global effect.
We have
that
world
it's
powers
having.
in trouble. We have world
Yeah,
powers
you
in
got
trouble.
world powers in trouble where they're trying to figure out things that things out now with the pandemic in play, and then also with the recession that's taking place now. So they're trying to figure that out.
Everybody's shelves are empty all over the place.
Everybody. So there's going to be a lot of pressure on local business. Shameless plug. Here at Search and Rescue General Store, we're selling raw honey. We're selling local jam. We have pickled vegetables. So we're getting ready with quarantine food and
Well, let me
things that are
let me ask you this
non-perishables.
question, something that might come up. Is this, within they call it the barter system, whatever, could this be currency?
Yes, this can be currency. This fits
That's my question. Could it be currency?
This fits the conditions. The question is, will people accept it universally? Anywhere I go, I can take my money
I want to wait. Yeah, I want to wait to get to that.
and they'll take it.
Yeah.
But only certain people who need honey at that time will take this from me. So it puts some restrictions on
Yeah,
the
put some
way it
restrictions on
flows.
it.
So for that reason, it can be used as money, but it wouldn't be the most effective as currency.
Well, I wouldn't make it specific to that. I'm just talking about things in general.
Yes,
Because
yes.
the currency doesn't matter the shape of it. It just matters if it's accepted or not. I mean,
Yeah.
I can make a piece of paper currency. I can take my
This
phone.
is more under the commodity.
Mm-hmm.
This is more commodity assets that you can trade and liquefy.
Yeah.
They're they're liquefiable.
You can break it
commodities.
down. Yeah, you can break it down into a currency.
But it's still gonna have a step to go through before you get what you want.
Exactly, yeah.
And that's what the currency allows. It allows
That
that
medium
free
of
flow.
exchange.
That
It's the medium
medium of
between
exchange.
between the
And that's
commodity
why-
and the people is the currency.
And that's what makes gold perfect
That's why I bought it. I wanted to
for
get that cleared up.
a medium of exchange, because not only is it you can break it down, you can break it down into pieces, you can count it, you can weigh it, you can transfer it. It's widely accepted by everybody. It's universal, and it stores its value, and it's durable. It doesn't depreciate, it doesn't corrode. Nothing happens to it. It's indestructible. So for that reason, this is why it makes the best form of money and the best form of currency.
Okay. So right now, I know a lot of people are looking for solutions right now, and they're looking at ways of. And this is an informational talk. This financial literacy. We're not really coming up with a lot of solutions, so we're not going to place that on you right now for our solutions. But we're going to talk about some of the things that they're trying to do to counteract. And how would it look if we did have one world currency? If we did have one world currency to play, how would that
Slipped
actually
that one
look?
in there.
You slipped it in on
yeah.
us.
How would a world currency work?
All right. Well, the world currency has to work when people start giving up sovereignty. Governments have sovereign right to their economy. There isn't a whole lot of transparency between different governments and different economies. So, in order for the world currency to work, there has to be a buy-in, and there has to be a merging of economies. A lot of times there's a new currency created that entities can partner, or there's a third party. For instance, the way that Saudi Arabia does business with America with the petro oil, that in order to buy the oil, the petrodollar, in order to buy the oil, you have to first put it in American dollars first, and then you can buy the oil. So that stimulates America's dollar, and then that puts the Saudi Arabian oil in America's trade deals, in their market share. So now their oil is getting sold because of that. This created some sort of a partnership, an exchange where a dollar can result because of that. Now, if there's other economies that share in that interest or are owed from that partnership, they now can end up being able to merge and being able to share some
Do
of
you
that
see
currency.
this actually be coming to fruition as far as a world currency coming into play? Do you see that this?
We're already getting word that that it's being proposed right now for a world currency in order for us to get the American dollar back on track.
Okay. So now, would a world currency be sinister or no? Because I know some people, when they
Yeah,
hear
yeah,
world
you
currency,
hear.
they hear a lot of people get negative
It gets a
views
negative
of
rap,
it.
but no, actually,
Yeah.
it can be a double-edged sword.
Okay.
It can bring strength to our economy because we see what happened with the internet. We're able to send Cash App. We're able to send PayPal. We're able to do business in Japan. We're able to do business in these other places
Okay.
because
You
we're
mentioned how China and Denmark and other countries are almost cashless, meaning that they're moving over to the digital side of things.
right.
Almost completely.
Which
So-
brings us into the digital currency, the Bitcoin, the blockchain technology, which allows different economies to all see everyone's transactions happening in real time.
Yeah.
That makes it easier to share a currency.
Yeah, or what was proposed by the Senate as far as trying to
Digital dollar.
do digital dollar.
They
more.
have a precedence with these other markets that
Markets.
are just as large and
Large,
are just
yeah,
as thriving.
exactly.
So it makes it easy for it to walk into
So
our
my question
walk into
would
our
be,
economy.
when he asked the question, is it sinister? I think it would have to go, and this is the question to you, this is my opinion, but also a question to you. I think it goes back to the intent of the people controlling the system. Because if you have a digital currency where
A digital currency in and of itself isn't a sinister move.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Go back to the intent of the person, people controlling
Yeah,
the system.
yeah.
Because if the people controlling it want to use it to enforce something,
Mm-hmm.
for example, and this is just me being plain devil's advocate. If all the money is digital, right, and there has to be somebody controlling, it has to be a puppet master.
Yeah.
And if I don't agree with a particular thing, or I be like, I'm standing out, you could just push a button and cut my life off.
Well, now
So
the
that's what
digital
I'm saying. That's
currency
why it could be
has to
dangerous.
have something behind it. They're talking about this world dollar has to be backed with something like gold or oil.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not the same as the fiat conversation that we were talking about. It can't be proposed as fiat unless all the nations believe in that dollar, and that's a political debate right now. We don't all agree. Every nation don't agree in their
And also,
market
what you was
differences and
mentioning
their
before,
interest differences.
You were saying how the fiat currency actually depreciate, actually the value goes down.
Right, and some countries know that. Some countries know that. Okay, I'm not going to trade my natural resources for a note that we don't have a full transparency on. I don't know if there's anything behind that dollar.
And
bill.
even if even like it was just mentioned, how a lot of the other countries, Denmark and China, and them going cashless.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that probably the new wave. What do you feel about that? The new wave will be a digital world currency, as opposed to using the note in the fiat currency.
Bitcoin is that right now.
Okay.
Bitcoin is doing that right now. We
But-
see that working in real time with Bitcoin.
But what the Senate of America was trying to impose, she wasn't implicating
Who,
Bitcoin.
Nancy Pelosi?
Yeah, she wasn't.
But that's what the stimulus is about. They didn't
Yeah,
agree
she
to the
wasn't-
stimulus until the government agreed to give these checks. They want to get these checks out in digital form, not
Yeah,
paper checks.
exactly. And they didn't. They wasn't talking about Bitcoin.
No,
to
they
do
wasn't.
It.
They
They
wasn't
were
talking
talking
about
about using digital means.
Basically, how the EBT and the debit card is.
works exactly
Understand,
like that. To
understand.
give the stimulus like that. We
Understand.
create a card. This particular card will have your information on it and stuff like
But
that.
I don't know if we're mixing between the world currency or relations within United States of America.
I think it's all the same thing, though, because I'm just saying I think it's all connected. There's no way to. I think that we think that this. My thing is I think that we believe that all these people are just sovereign and they're not interconnected. They are. So the only reason we're thinking of a world or just America because we think that everybody's sovereign and everybody's not working together for the same goal. And I think this might be a misconception.
And also, it might
You know
be
what I'm saying? I think it might be a
because
misconception.
even when we had
I
the
don't think
fiat
that people are
currency,
sovereign like that.
But even when we had the fiat currency in play, each country had their own cash. And when they had their cash in play, they still had to merge with one another because they have to do trade with one another. So even that fiat currency had to be passed around. So if one country comes into play with a certain currency, then the other countries have to come into play with that currency.
Well, it's
as
going to be a third party.
So if digital does come in play, it has to. I would think it would go on a path to being world currency because we have to interact with other trade.
It'll even be more
Medium
controlled,
exchange.
though. It'll even be more controlled because what I'm saying is that you put something digital, like say for like $1 or something paper, I can have it in my pocket and you don't know what it is. You don't know how much I got. You don't know where I'm spending it at. Not really. I still have some advantage of control over my paper money in my pocket. But if you put everything digital, you take away.
Yeah, you're talking about some of the pitfalls of it, meaning that
Yeah.
it gives up some of your sovereignty.
That's what
Other
you asked about
countries
sinister.
don't
I'm
have
just
to do
mentioning
it.
some of the sinister things that can happen
also
from
it gives up some of your privacy because
Yeah.
people have to keep the ledger. They would know exactly about you. Also allows a person to.
You can squeeze me too
Yeah.
if you want to.
Yeah,
You know?
I mean that's some of the effects that goes along with it. But I believe that might be the direction of the new currency. if
But
they
before,
put it in play.
but before they just cut the lights on and say, okay, everybody has to use this. One currency has to run
concurrent.
concurrent with another currency, and the people ultimately are going to have to choose one over the other.
Okay.
So you'll have because right now all of those currencies are mini currencies, all in world circulation.
Okay.
They're all Litecoin, Bitcoin. They're all world currencies moving around.
Okay.
And it's that blockchain technology that allows them to do this. So there's going to be a centralized bank between the major governing bodies. I don't know those names right now. I'm not here to have those details, but there's going to be a bank that's a third party to all of those, kind of like how the UN works. The UN works outside of all of the governments, but it creates that harmony so that there's no.
Yeah. It's
there's
outside but connected.
It's outside but connected. So it's going to have to be some financial institution like this, but it's the blockchain technology that's
like
going
the
to allow
Federal
them
Reserve.
to be able
Federal
to do
Reserve is apart from the government, but it actually came in.
Yes.
And it's
Yes,
aside from the
but
government.
also what would force people to accept whatever they say is that if the companies or the products that's being sold, they all agree that we're not going to give up our product except with this digital currency. So that will force everybody
that
to.
will cause a monopoly.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying?
So it's once it gets into play is the first step, and then those larger entities trying to move it into a more universal direction so that everybody just working with the same currency would be somewhat of a goal. But again, it will help big economies that have overinflated their money, and it will help smaller economies that don't have their own money. And it will allow them to kind of like even some of those world playing fields a little bit.
So can we say that a digital currency, with the way things are looking, this might get a little worse, but we're saying with a digital currency, it will save a lot of these governments as far as their collapse because their currency is dying, right? It will kind of put them back in play.
Yeah.
That's one good thing, right?
That's one good thing.
But there are side effects as far as your privacy, as far as your
I think
control of your money
privacy
and
is
things
a
like
big deal.
That's a big deal,
But we
I think.
gave
I'm only
up.
bringing that up.
We gave up a lot of our rights on social media, and we give up a lot of our rights every day for the convenience of technology.
Was that kind of getting you used to walking you into
Yeah.
not having privacy?
Our kids don't care about the privacy at the level we care about.
Yeah,
And
because
they
our
know that.
generation had that privacy.
Right.
They didn't.
And our parents care more about privacy than we care about right now. So I think that they understand that's getting
Yeah.
diluted.
Yeah.
And people are starting to live it, are starting to get used to and adapted to living a transparent lifestyle. Look at the way that the social media encourage us to live our lives. They want you to have your phone on all day, and they want everybody to be a reality show. Look at how it evolves. It goes from posting a video to going live to,
So really, digital currency, the new generation is less afraid of that than we would be and our parents would be.
Yeah, 100%.
So they kind of got people used to this. Here, once they throw it out there, people gonna be like, "Oh, all right." They already was.
Okay, so
okay.
It's like the hayab being stripped away
I
slowly
know
but
what you
surely.
mean.
So financial literacy, right? Which this show is dedicated because we call it knowledge as well, teaching people financial literacy. What role does that play in everything we discussed today? And everything we talked about, what is money, what is currency, the different types of currencies, what is inflation, what is recession, if it was a world currency, how all of that worked. Why does financial literacy, does it play a role at all in any of this?
Yes, it does. We said in the previous episodes that money is a tool, that currency is a tool. And take a screwdriver, for example. You have different types of screwdrivers. You have different heads on a screwdriver. You have different lengths. So all of these different types of currencies, understanding how they work, understanding how they interchange with one another, understanding its lifespan and different things, the origins of it. You know, how do we get to this point right now that we're trading money like this? It was a gradual effect. All of that is you understanding what tools to go to in your tool bag when it's time to use it. You get confronted with a situation, you can say, okay, I don't have any money on me, but can this be used as currency? What other tool can I use to reach my goal? What can I barter with? Very
So all
important.
of that knowledge in and of itself, knowing its origin, understanding money, understanding how we got to and how it evolved and how we developed to the media of exchange and things like that, what we call financial literacy.
Yes, sir.
All of that will be under that, right?
Definitely.
And if you want to get ahead in any society, no matter what currency they're using,
Well, a man
you
is
still
known.
will have knowledge.
A real craftsman is known by his tools. A real tradesman is
Yeah.
known by his tools. So if your trade is to you know, if a part of your trade is trying to get money to work for you, you have to understand all of the tools in your arsenal and when they're used and how they're used.
Okay, so my thing is this. Should the people be afraid if it's a world currency?
I don't think that
digital
people
world
should be
currency?
afraid of anything. They should know that the risk is from Allah.
Okay, the provisions from the law.
And they should know that having basic understanding and financial literacy will allow you to move in any economical climate, anyone. Because whatever is there, you'll be able to utilize it. You won't be too much reliant on obsolete methods to acquire your goals.
And so that you still arm yourself with information.
With knowledge.
With knowledge.
Knowledge, well, I mean, you got to keep changing. You got to keep changing whatever changes, whether it's good for you, bad for you, whether the situation gets worse or better. You got to change with that. You got to flow with that. And knowledge helps you flow along
And
like
the
that.
knowledge and the knowledge of economics, the knowledge of finance, it goes back in history. You have to understand it from a historical perspective. You have to understand it from a current perspective. And you have to be able to understand those trends and those patterns to see where things are going in the future, because that's how you lay your investments down.
Yeah, no doubt. For sure.
Okay, so that pretty much sums up
Yeah, it does.
a lot of you know, what we covered today. We wanted to, you know, we want to thank our host and we want to thank our
That's why we call
our
him
guest.
Coach. You know what I
That's
mean?
Coach.
To pick his brain. You know what I
to pick his
mean?
brain on some
Yeah,
of
to
the,
pick his
the
brain,
different things
man.
of what is money, you know, the different types of currencies that are in play, understanding, you know, the world currency, understanding recession and inflation, because that plays a major part, which shows you how everything's pretty much is like one unit, and that if one thing is out of play, it trickles down like a domino effect, where something else be harmed as well. So inflation is something that we definitely all got to worry about. Recession is important too, because that's what we see right now happening.
That's what
right
we're in.
now.
Yeah, that's what we're living in right now.
We're having it. They were just talking about how in America, the U.S., how many types of people are unemployed right now because of the pandemic.
Yeah.
And that unemployment, what equals, again, what you were talking about, goes back again to that, you know, that recession.
They won't put any currency back into the market because the people don't have money.
And they're going to get paid unemployment, and they're going to hold on to that unemployment check because they don't have the foreseeable
Which
future
what
for
goes
certain
back
work.
to why our president here in the U.S. would say we're trying to get the people back at work
Right.
around Easter time, because we're trying to say, okay, we need the people back again, producing that productivity.
Because if you give somebody money and inflation goes up, because inflation eats your savings.
Yep.
Because if you give me $3,000, right, the stimulus, whatever they talking about, you give me the bread. But like my sister went to get some bleach. Now they got a small thing of bleach. It's probably about this big, right? Usually it costs $1.99. It was $3.79. So it went up almost $3.
Yeah, the bleach didn't
$2.
change.
The
Yeah,
bleach didn't change.
Yeah,
but the inflation caused it to go up. So to eat your savings. You know, like jelly bean used to be a quarter. Now jelly bean to be $5. You know what I'm saying? So at the end of the day, they giving us money, but if you don't go back to work, you know what I'm saying? And the president's saying that, but I don't see no signs of that happening no time soon. But if that doesn't happen in any time soon, I mean, they don't care how much stimulus money you give somebody. If there's no product to get and the product is too high, the money value doesn't go up. But the price of the, you know, the stuff, you know, it just kills you.
These are things that while you're sitting home, while you're quarantining, these are things that you should think about. You should take a look. And, you know, especially for those who are Muslim, you should also be happy and take a little bit of pride in the system, the Islamic financial system, and see how the zakat system was actually set up. You can learn a lot in that. If you can take your time to really learn how the zakat system is actually set up, how that was laid out, it freed us from a lot of receptions. And if you go back into the earlier Muslims, like the earlier Muslim generations, and, you know, go back to those like Umar ibn Khattab and the different Khulafa, you're going to see how they were able to get around certain things from the economy crashing or collapsing and things like that, as what we see in play right now. So that's not to take a stab at anybody. This is not what we want to do. We thank the coach for, picking his brain, for sharing that with us. But we need to know what is currency. What is actually money? We're talking about financial literacy. We talk about getting ahead. We're talking about enriching yourself, empowering yourself, making sure your family is okay. Then you need to understand. I wanted to mention something also too, that outside of just the medium of exchange and the three principles that he brought, we have to understand that our time and our freedom is our most valuable asset. And I wanted to talk about that because we have to understand that, yes, we have currency in order to do trade, in order to do medium of exchange, in order to have that, but we have to understand, what are we giving up for any type of currency that's in circulation or in play? We have to realize that it's our time and our freedom. That's your real currency. Along with your creativity, along with other things, these are your currency. So you have to be careful on how you give up that time.
Yep.
You understand? And what you're exchanging for it. So we're going to be talking. Stay tuned for our next episode, episode 5, inshallah. We're going to start going into some more heavy stuff, hopefully, to shed some light on different things, because we need to really start thinking about the barter system more heavy. And like Coach said, here, if you're in Philadelphia or you're in this area, we also do internet drop shipping. You could get some different things, that we have here, that's dry goods.
That's the 4-bean salad. That's pickled 4-bean salad.
Because if you don't understand the thing about inflation,
Apricot jam.
what happens is food is a necessity. It's not something that, I just want to eat here. So what happened is whenever things rise, prices rise, when it comes to our basic needs, our basic necessities, well, for the Muslim, your life is already monitored under Allah Azza wa Jalla. And to be honest with you, the reason why the brother said not to be afraid, okay, and I'm not here to disagree or agree with this, but because think about it, when you use a cell phone, they're already telling you your cell phone got a camera on it. Your computer has an IP address. Your computer has a camera on it, which someone can access that camera without you actually doing something.
And they do all the time.
They got cars right now that you don't know. They got the chip in it that they can lock your car down. I mean, you watching the movies, you see the Fast and the Furious, you see these different things, and you're like, hold on, what's going on? They have these things in play. You already being monitored.
And then with 5G getting ready to come out,
Yeah.
you're not going to have no choice to opt out.
Yeah.
You're going to walk into a KFC, and that 5G is going to read everything it needs to read about you off your facial recognition, and it's going to tell everybody that owns the machine who came in and why.
And they already have things.
We're
have those
under
things in
surveillance.
play. So you're already under surveillance at a level. You understand? So you don't have to be so spooky. You just have to realize that in play with this system that they already had in play, because it didn't just start today because the economy crashed.
And we've been slowly giving up our own rights.
Your
So
rights are already
they know.
been given up. And if you really understand, and it's not the time, but if you really understand fiat currency and that whole thing, you're going to realize what you've been giving up anyway. The moment you signed on for that, you was giving up a lot from your rights. But the point I wanted to make is that you have to understand that you have time and freedom as your most valuable asset. Utilize it. We made a statement before. We said that the difference between the rich and the poor, okay? When we say rich and the poor, stop thinking rich and the poor in terms of currency. When we say rich and the poor, we're talking about someone who has a rich, valuable soul. A person who's rich. He can't get ahead in whatever society you put him in, and whatever market you put him in. So the rich and the poor is what they do in their spare time.
Yep.
That's the difference between them. What are you doing with your time? What are you doing with your time? Is you educating yourself? Or are you taking the time out to actually increase, as like Coach was explaining? Learn these different things so that you can know you can be ahead. They come with a world currency. Don't be afraid. Know how to maneuver within that.
You got to create a mindset now, though.
Exactly. And that's why we
gotta create a
preach
mindset.
knowledge is wealth. Islam preach what? Allah had told Muhammad SAW in the Quran that what? Don't ask for any increase except for what?
Knowledge.
Knowledge. What did even Bukhari, he placed in his chapter, knowledge precedes speech and actions. So we know that knowledge is the formidable tool, which is risk. which is a provision from Allah. Whether you want to say, we know we got the highest type of knowledge is knowing about Allah and His Deen, but then, you have other forms of knowledge out there.
That's beneficial.
And he who has that knowledge, or she who possesses that knowledge, is the one who what? Gets ahead. As the person who doesn't know. How was they able to trick the people into slavery and things like that?
Just lack
Not
of knowledge.
reading, don't teach them how to read, don't do this, and that.
But just
things
remove
you don't know.
knowledge. Remove knowledge from
How
people.
many of us sometimes when we go into phone companies and we go to these different companies, we don't read the what? The
Fine
fine print.
print.
The contracts, they have them in there, the clauses are there, you don't know how to read them, they get over on you because what? You don't have the necessary knowledge to how to read that. You understand? So we want to make sure we arm ourselves. That's why we say knowledge is wealth. Hopefully we thank Coach again, and we thank the brother Isa Abu Isa.
Alhamdulillah.
It's your brother Nafisa Hussein. We thank all of you for tuning in. We appreciate your feedback, your comments. We're not disagreeing or agreeing. We're just saying that take in consideration, we don't want to get too spooky here, okay? Because Allah is still in control. God is still in control. If you don't want to call him Allah, God is still in control, not the world governments, even though they seem to be in control in the way that they're moving things right now. But we still have to believe in that concept that God is still in control. So,
And don't forget, we're at 3101 West Glenwood Avenue, Brewery Town, Philadelphia.
exactly.
And this is the Search and Rescue General Store. Search and Rescue Dry Goods General Store.
And
We're open-
Senate, you go.
we're open Thursday through Sundays, 9 to 4, or else appointment.
And also send in any questions you might have, or send in any topics that you think that you want to hear to be discussed. And if we can help you guys out with that, we can. Make sure you send it. I know we're on YouTube. You can send it in inbox us on YouTube as well. If you got our Facebook channel, Maktab Ibn Taymiyyah, you can go to that and inbox us, and we'll be able to do that. Hopefully, inshallah.
Barakallahu feek.
Big brother, come on.